Episode 72, Zodiac Killer Case, Gary Poste. Well, if you haven't heard the big news in the Zodiac Killer Case, a group called the Case Breakers has named a suspect, Gary Francis Poste. So this episode, we're just going to give you a little bit of information about him. Gary was born in upstate New York on November 8th, 1937, in the little town of Potsdam. His mother was Elva Robinson Poste, and she lived a long life until 92 years old. His father was Glenn Stephen Poste, and he had 5 sons. Gary was the second son. And Glenn had enlisted in the Army in 1941 or 42. And I thought this was interesting. This is the back of the description of him. And he was 5'7", his father, and 160 pounds, and had blue eyes and brown hair. Okay, here is the U.S. Census data for Gary's family. So Gary's dad was Glenn, and he lived in Pierrepont, New York in 1940. And then they rented their home for $12 a month. And then at that time, there were 4 members of the family. And his older brother was named Glenn Stephen. And their ages, the father was 29, the mother was 23, his older brother was 4, and he was 2. His parents had a high school education. All the family members were born in New York. Here's where they were living 5 years earlier. His father was a carpenter who worked at R&R Paper Company. And he made $1,400 a year. In the 1950s, Gary's family lived in Lyons Falls in New York. Gary attended Central High School in 1953. He was a freshman. There he is, right there. Gary enlisted in the United States Air Force in 1956. He was involved in a serious car accident in 1959, where his buddy was killed. At some point in the 1960s, he moved to Alameda, California, which is right near Oakland. In this one-sentence news story in his hometown newspaper, Gary visited his parents, and it lists that he lived in Alameda, California, and this would have been 2 months prior to the attack at Blue Rock Springs on July 4th. And here's a side-by-side view of the sketch of the Zodiac Killer and Gary around the same time as the murders. And then here I just included the obituary for Gary's father. And then, for some crazy reason, at the end of his life, he committed a couple crimes. One against his wife, and one I think was a robbery. And Gary passed away on August 23rd, 2018. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved. And in the next episode, I will either talk about Gary a little bit more, or because of this, I have a new suspect, and it's not Gary. And so the next episode might be about my new suspect. And I haven't given up on John Johnson either.